Hey, thanks so much for tuning into the Picture Your Dream Here podcast. My name is Jacob Hemingway, and I'm so excited to be your host. I've written an album and released it this year, Picture Your Dream Here. It's an instrumental guitar album available on all streaming platforms, and it's meant to inspire people to take some time, listen to the music, and picture your dreams. Big dreams, small dreams, everything in between. I've also come out with some journals, Picture Your Dream Here journals, and they're meant to be a place where you can actually write everything down. I think we all have dreams, but we don't always take the time to sit down and write it down, so I wanted to create something so that people have an opportunity to slow down and really think about all the dreams that they have in life and get them all written down. So head on over to jacobhemingway.com to check out journals. I've got t-shirts, and then you can stream Picture Your Dream Here anywhere online. Thanks so much for tuning in. All right, this week we have a really old friend of mine, and he's not old. We've just known each other a long time. Gavin Buckland. Gavin is a very, very creative guy, and he has done a lot of really inspirational things, knowing that he wanted to be creative and go into a creative field, getting a degree right out of high school. Just a very driven person, married, he'll talk about more, married his high school sweetheart, an old friend of mine too, and I just love what he shares about his journey, where it's brought him, what dreaming has meant to him, and how that's impacted where he's worked, for how long, and what he's doing now. So tune in and enjoy this conversation with Gavin. Well, hey, Gavin Buckland, I got you here on the podcast. How you doing?
So great.
Okay, well, that's been a wrap. Thank you so much for being on.
Yep, that's all I've got for today.
Oh man, what a rough start.
The roughest.
I like the pauses too in between you and me. I think, most people would have stopped tuning in by now.
Yeah, they say dead air is bad, I think.
I agree.
So we just have to constantly
So we just have the diehard fans listening now. So if you're still listening, we're so proud of you. We have something special in store for you.
This is like the secret track that's at the end of an album, You would just have to wait for 12 minutes of silence, and then a new song would kick in, and you'd be like, oh my gosh, this wasn't listed on the track list. I'm so in a special club.
Well, and then you go to show your friends, and you're like, no, I swear it's at the end here. And you're scrolling through 9 minutes of dead silence. No, keep listening. No, I've almost found it. And then they're gone.
Yeah. So funny story. I used to, I had this karaoke machine in my bedroom when I was 12, I think. And I would put a Reliant K disc in, and I would fall asleep to it, which I don't know what that says about my sleep patterns, but I was falling asleep to punk rock, right? Super soothing. And it would get to track 12, which I think was the last one. And then they had that where they had 9 minutes of silence and then a secret song. And I remember having fallen asleep, and then the secret song comes out of nowhere with this I think this guy yells the word pepperoni super loud, and I remember just shooting up out of bed to the word pepperoni, and I was like, oh my gosh, and so I'd run over and shut it off, and my heart would be racing and everything. I'd be like, perfect, time to go back to sleep now.
Oh my gosh, wow.
There's a strange man in my room yelling words.
Pepperoni. That might have been me when we had when I was spending the night one night.
Yeah, it probably was. I've just mixed those memories together.
Well, one thing that's crazy, I remember staying over a few times, and then if we had church in the morning or something, you'd be like, oh, what time do we need to get up? And I would say I don't know, 8 or something. You'd go, okay. And you wouldn't set an alarm. I'm like, are you going to set an alarm? Like, no, I just know my body knows when to wake up. And sure enough, you could just do it. Can you still do that?
I cannot, and I, no joke, tell my wife those stories and she doesn't believe me because now I have the hardest time getting out of bed. I think I used up all of that like wake up juice or whatever you want to call it. Like it has been completely spent. And yeah, maybe I just need more people yelling pepperoni in the middle of the night, and that's like the missing sauce.
Oh man, one thing I have to say is I think we had a really good professional start at the beginning of this podcast, but I think we've broken into out of character and back into our normal selves at this point. So
yeah,
whether it's good or bad, we're gonna I was just gonna say they're gonna get an uncut ready to go podcast, I think.
I love it.
Well, hey, Picture Your Dream Here podcast. The point is to just share conversations with people that I know that have dreamed big. Sometimes dreams have changed, and I just wanted to create some space, just really some open space for you to share a bit about what you think got you to where you are now. Do you think you're anywhere close to where you thought you would be? Just kind of feel free to just share about some of those things. I'd love to eventually get to some more specific details of what you're specifically working on. But I just, knowing your story, you've pursued some specific things, and some things have kind of come to you too. So, floor is yours.
Love it. So, quick background on me. My name is Gavin, and Jacob and I grew up together, and we were local hooligans doing wild things. And since growing up in Iowa together, I have moved out to the Chicagoland area and married my high school sweetheart, which you know very well, and came out here for college just on a hope and a dream of being able to be involved in the film industry in some shape or form, and attended a college out here, got a degree in film, but always kind of had this dream of being able to start a creative agency. So, which are very common now, but I think at the time, bringing together people that were filmmakers and designers and web developers and strategists and copywriters, photographers, people of all different creative professions, bringing them all under kind of one roof to help brands and clients create like the full marketing package was somewhat of a new idea, at least to me, as I was coming into the world. And as Adobe programs were getting more accessible and cameras were getting cheaper and more high quality and stuff, just doing anything with video, it's really taking off. Social media, it's really kind of coming into its prime. And so I had this dream of creating a creative agency, and I got recommended someone who was doing something similar, but was just probably 5-10 years down the line from where I was. And so I met with them, and really they were not at all someone that I wanted to work with. I really saw them as my competition, and was okay, so you're someone who's doing something that I want to do, and so I need to learn everything I can from you and then go do it myself. And so at the end of this conversation with this guy, he ended up offering me a job, going, "Do you actually want to come join our team? We're growing, we're looking for people." And I was like, "No, I already have a job. Thank you. I'm going to go do my own thing." And then thought about it, and really was I could learn a lot, from this. And ended up joining their team, seeing the inner workings of what was my dream, but laid out right there in front of me. And so that was, I think, a really big blessing and a unique position to be in that I got to see something that was very similar to what I was dreaming about, very up close. Because I think a lot of times when we're dreaming, me especially, can kind of have this the grass is greener. Once I achieve that dream, once I do that, it's life's going to be so nice and it's going to be so easy. And I'll finally be doing the thing that I want to do. But know what it's going to take to get there. You don't know the hard things that are going to be required of doing that day in and day out. And that's really, I got to see for the next 6 years. I worked as a part of this team and helped grow the company. And I learned a ton about filmmaking. I learned a ton about directing commercials and films for big brands, and also nonprofits and churches and everything kind of across the line. Anyone that was really working to do good in the world was who we were helping create their marketing content, get their message out there, and help grow the impact that they were making. A lot of it was faith-based, which was super cool, super in line with my upbringing, my context of who I am and everything. So, but it wasn't specifically just faith-based content. And so then after around year 6, I was starting to kind of, I had kind of seen, what it would take to do this dream. And to be honest, was kind of like, I don't know if I have what it takes to do this, and left that company, that team, feeling pretty burned out, pretty creatively lost, creatively doubtful of myself, do I have what it takes to actually do this on my own? And the answer was no. The answer was that I told myself was no, I don't have what it takes to do this. And so I left that company really with no dream of the future, with no direction, no place that I saw like going. And I'm definitely I think can be a spectrum of, there's people that really love to dream and they're very conceptually minded and they can think big picture. And there's people that are more technical minded and can get things done really well. And I'm almost as far as you can get on the conceptual, big dream. So I'm definitely a flawed dreamer in the sense of can come up with ideas, but I don't know what it's going to take to get there. And so leaving, this company after those 6 years not having a dream was, I think, a big sign of kind of where my mental and emotional health were in terms of Gavin's not in line with who he's designed to be. And I was somewhat floundering. I took a job that was just going to help pay the bills. And in the meantime was looking at going back to school, was thinking about getting into the medical field, becoming a chiropractor. I was in talks with the admission reps of a school in Kentucky about going there, joining their sports science, program and everything. And it's just crazy to look back on that time and think wow, I was totally jumping ship and was running from, I think, this dream that I had once had. And that's okay, that's fine to do. But I think it just looking back on that now, I go, I was lost. And funny enough, the job that I had taken that just was going to kind of help pay the bills was offering a kind of career coaching and therapy mix type of a program. There was a 6-month program. It brought in elements of you looking back at your life, at your childhood, but it also brought in you giving you the space to be able to dream and to figure out what do you want, how do you want to live the life that you've wanted to, and let us help you figure that out. And so it was with a personal therapist, met once a week and for 6 months, and really got to get clear on what your dream is and what my dream was. And I got to fall back in love with my passion for filmmaking and get really clear on what it is about filmmaking that I'm passionate about. And ultimately, like many filmmakers, it is to tell stories and to tell a compelling story. And then as far as the how it then mixes in career, is I got to look at holistically at the full filmmaking process. And there's 3 processes or 3 parts to the filmmaking process. And that's pre-production. That's where your story is written and really kind of ideated. The second part is the production, where you actually film and bring your crew together. And then you have post-production, which is the editing, the motion design, the visual effects, the sound, the color. You bring all the elements together to tell a good story. And I have always loved that kind of piece of being able to bring things together. Something that kind of reminds me of is like when you and I, Jacob, would make different movies as we were kids, messing around in the fields of Iowa, and we would remake books as movies in our classroom, you know, for school and stuff. I really loved that element of bringing the different pieces together, the music, the film, and all that stuff. And so on one hand, post-production was a love for me. Like I often wanted to, like, if I was going to make a film, I really wanted good stuff to work with. And since there was no one else around me that was giving me that good stuff, I would go out and shoot it. And I think that's how I kind of like fell into the, you know, knowing pre-production and production is just like having to do it all. But as I'm getting older, and especially as you think about your career, you really got to continue to figure out what you're going to be an expert in. And that's what the question was kind of asked of me in this this program that I was part of. And so I really did get to rediscover my love for post-production and bringing all the pieces together in a film and getting to work with other creatives, other writers and directors and people that are going out and doing the filming and then are going to bring that awesome content back to me and our team, and we're going to get to like make all that, put it together. They say the final director of a film is the editor, because they get to decide like how the story really is put together. It's one thing to write it, it's one thing to shoot it, but the kind of the last hands on are going to be the editor, and you're working closely with the director for sure. But a director hires a good editor because they want them to be able to direct the story in a way that they understand. And so that's been super exciting. So then I reconnect with a friend of mine who I worked at the agency with for 6 years. He was my roommate in college. He was in my wedding, and he was doing his own thing with film stuff. And we were like, you know, we really miss working together. We miss the collaboration. We miss getting to use our strengths with each other because they complement each other well. Like he's very technical minded and can bring a lot of execution to my ideas. And so we were like, let's do this. So in January of this year of 2023, we officially started working together and decided to go into business together. And then it was around like April or May, we were like, we should probably tell people like about this and get it out, get it out there publicly. And so we had our official launch in June of this year as Voke Studios, which is a play off of the word evoke. We really want the content we make to evoke emotion and the stories that we tell to compel the audience, because that's ultimately what drives action and stays with you, is a story that compels you. And so we were going to be just called Evoke, and we actually have some good friends that are in the industry similarly that are called Evolve. And so Dustin, my business partner, goes, that seems a little close. And I'm like, well, then you come up with a name. Like, I'm so like done with this name generation thing. Like, this is not my strength. And he's like, what if we just drop the E, just make it Voke? It's more abstract. It's still kind of has that meaning that we're going for and everything. So that's kind of some context behind the name, and then ultimately catches you up to where I am today. We're running Voke Studios, and we're making we're a full like post-production house. So we do editing, we do motion design, visual effects, sound, and color. So we bring all those elements together, kind of a one-stop shop for agencies and production companies that have their content and need it to be made by a team that they can trust, all under one roof. So we're doing commercials, we're doing short films, we're doing documentaries, narrative stuff. I think the goal in the dream, so what I'm dreaming about now is for us to be able to like work on a, Marvel movie level type of film and get to take a scene and do the visual effects for that, bring in like our creativity and our best ideas to the some of the biggest movies that are playing in front of the biggest audiences. So that's not going to happen overnight, but it's something we're definitely excited about doing as a team.
That's really exciting. There's a few things in there I'd love to unpack. One of them having to do with you're working with this company that when your first take, the man who felt like your competition ended up being your boss, right? And
Yes.
you were watching him and being like, oh, if I want for my dreams to come true, I just have to be a chameleon, and what this guy does, that's what I'll be doing, right? So was he more of an ideas guy? I'm like, not like, oh, I have an idea for editing, like I have an idea for like a film, or I have an idea for, did he have a lot more of that front end kind of like inspiration? Is that where you felt like you were getting kind of dried up? Like, oh, I don't, like for my example, it'd be like, there's the post-production, there's the editing, there's the layering of instruments in a song, but then there's the coming up with the composition of it from the start. Is that where you were feeling burnt out?
Yeah, that's a good question, honestly. I learned so much, from my boss, from being at this agency for 6 years. Really Dustin and I both got to cut our teeth on all of the work over the years, and getting to be a part of the very initial, pre-production process of script writing and directing, coming up with the concept and pitching that to the client all the way through the end delivery. And I think there is a certain level of burnout that can come with that, for sure, if you're not finding ways to recharge. I think ultimately too, I think I'm wired to be my own boss, to be making decisions at a higher level. And so I think not getting to do that also kind of like, I think I saw that I had kind of reached somewhat of a ceiling of, like, I had learned a lot, and I think it was kind of time for me to jump out of the nest. And the thing about when you jump out of a nest and don't know how to fly, you hit the ground first. And I think that's what, like, I was kind of experiencing outside of that company, is going, I've jumped, but I don't know what I'm doing, but I need to have jumped. There's never going to be a perfect time. There's never going to be a perfect scenario for me to leave and go figure it out. And I'm grateful for those 6 years. I'm also really grateful for that year that I was doing that 6-month program, trying to figure out what was needed in order to do this sustainably, and do this in the way that makes the most sense to me, as opposed to, like you're saying, just grafting into someone else's dream, someone else's process. And I think there's a certain level of, I'm super grateful for getting to learn by being a part of his dream and that agency's mission. But ultimately, the time had come that it was time for me to figure that out for myself. And I don't think I would have if I had stayed there. That's not going to be the journey for everyone, but that's something that I think, as I reflect on it, that I definitely needed to jump, hit somewhat of the rock bottom, and then be able to, that's where you figure out what is going to be the way that I want to do it.
Yeah, I think why. Totally. Not to get into it being too personal, but do you feel like you were able to kind of process some of that as you were like in this transitional thing, or was it just kind of something burning in your soul? I just kind of have to take a jump. I was like, look, I'm going to take this jump. Was it something that you kind of shared the experience? Because I feel like a lot of times when we have dreams and we are like, I just got to pull the trigger on it, sometimes it's easy just to kind of like not look left or right or back and just move forward. So what was kind of the experience for that for you? Because we're both such relational people that it can be really hard to like we want to do that well, and sometimes you're like, I feel like this is going to get like kind of messy, but I got to do it anyways.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely hard conversations and hurt feelings and moments of, am I making the right call? Am I not? I had a lot of people in my corner that were cheering me on for years that were like, hey, Gavin, we remember you telling us about this dream that you had when you were leaving college. Like, what's going on with that? And just cheering me on and encouraging that, like, hey, I do have what it takes, when I'm telling myself that I don't, and I think that's like what helps push through those hard times. And I think that's ultimately what is required of pursuing any dream, is going to have being surrounded by people that are going to hold you accountable, but be really like curious with you and be like not afraid to dive into it. The fact that they asked me, hey, what's going on with that? They weren't trying to like hold my feet to the fire or anything. They just were genuinely curious. And so getting asked those questions, getting pulled out of yourself, and for people to be able to reflect back on you and be like, you do have what it takes. Like, and here's why, this reason, this reason, this reason. You're like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Or, and so as I was transitioning and doubting myself a ton, it was really awesome to have those voices of encouragement and support through it all. And I think that I would not be here today for sure without them.
That's so cool. I feel like a lot of times dreamers, they're just like, it's just going to take having to burn the ships, and like, no one's going to understand this, but I'm going to do it anyways. And it's just such a value we see in having a healthy, supportive community, because like a lot of those people, they're still like that same support, even though like, your work doesn't define you, where you work, who you are, right? So you're able to still kind of have those cheerleaders, instead of like, I just got to drop everything and start over, new friends and all that kind of stuff. You're able to kind of do this in your safety net was actually through the people that were around you in that season. They're still in this season. Is that right?
Totally. Absolutely. And I think if your friends aren't encouraging you to pursue your dream, I would get pretty curious about that, and look around as to why that is. There might be very good reasons for it. And there might be very bad reasons for it.
That's really cool. There were a couple other things I wanted to unpack, but
hit me.
Well, I can't, because I can't remember what those things were. So was there anything else on your mind you wanted to share while I'm trying to drum up some brain cells here?
Yeah, sure. I feel like I am definitely... So two things. I feel like I am definitely what you would call a flawed dreamer, in the sense of I dream probably actually way too much and come up with ideas very easily left and right. And I kind of have a new thing that I want to like deep dive into. Like every week, you can ask my wife, I'm like talking her ear off about like, oh, like what if we actually like moved to Europe for a month and did this and that and stuff? Or what if we became real estate moguls and invested all of
right.
our money into this thing, and here's why? And what if I actually, started a new company and stuff? And she's like, didn't you just start one like a month ago? Like what? Like, how's that one going? And it's like, oh yeah. And I think that's great. But I was listening to a podcast actually about the guy who he started like hotels.com and kayak and stuff. It was super random. He's like a multi-billionaire, and he was just saying, yeah, I've started all these different companies that were dreams of mine, but I never did them at the same time. And that was really challenging for me. And I think ultimately, as I look to become more of a healthy dreamer, is consistency and going all in on a thing and growing it to the best of its ability and getting to that like final dream, state, and bringing in people that are going to make my dream bigger than what it ever was as well. But we're like really focus and provide a lot of consistency in that, and doing the things day in and day out that are going to be required in order to get the dream to the place that you want it to be, and to get yourself into the life that you've always wanted to live. And so yeah, that's like the one, I think, challenge that I would give to other fellow dreamers out there is take a long look at the dream in front of you and ask yourself, what are the actions that I can do over and over again that are going to get me to that place? And really try hard to focus on bringing that consistency day in and day out, even when you don't feel like it. Because I think that's the thing that I'm challenging myself with. And so it's not easy, and that it will definitely probably be the thing that I continue to work on for the rest of my life. But I think that is ultimately the thing about dreaming. And I think we were, as humans, made to pursue things, not necessarily just reach those destinations. Like, I feel like it is about the pursuit.
Yeah, I think that from the inception of an idea or conception of an idea, writing it down, that's just as much part of the journey as starting to share that. Probably the scariest part is sharing that with the people around you. Because it's like, are they going to shoot it down? Am I just crazy for this? One person says one bad thing, you're like, okay, I guess I'll do something else. But going through all of that is such a huge part of the journey. Sometimes it's resistance. Like, okay, people are saying this, but I'm going to do it anyways. And sometimes it's like, well, I'm glad I shared that because, people around me saved me probably a good 5-7 years. And then you're working towards something and then moving towards it. And I love the idea of the consistency. And I can definitely relate with that. Like, I think growing up, trying new things, learning new skills, playing new instruments, it was fun until I had to start to get into the routine of practicing things. Like, well, let me start a new instrument and get that, first honeymoon, like, oh, this is so cool. And moving on. And of course, you can't really change something that's a part of who you are. I think for a long time personally, because the podcast is about me now, a long time personally, I had heard some things when I was younger, like you like to start things, but you just like have a hard time sticking with it. And I always thought of that as just like, that's such a bad thing. Like I should just pick one thing and go with it. But recognizing like, no, that's who I am. Yes, there's drawbacks. And there are things I need to work through and stick through, stay with it longer than I probably want to. It's probably uncomfortable, but then also not like, well, I want to start this new thing as an escape. That's what they're saying. It's like, it's not an escape. It's just, that's just how I'm wired. So I think people hearing that too, like just because like, yes, we do need to do the consistency thing, but that's because we want the things that we do to last longer than us, right?
Absolutely. And I think there are so many different types of people. Dreamers are one type of person. And I think everyone can dream, but I think each person, when it comes to dreaming, has their own challenge. And so if you look at the spectrum, I can't remember all of them, but there's a curriculum that I listened to that was outlining 4 different kind of types of people, 4 or 5. On the far end was more of your technically minded person, and the other was your conceptually minded person, like I talked about earlier. And I think with the dreamer, I think their challenge is to how to be consistent. And then I think with which is not at all the problem for the person on the opposite of the spectrum, they're all about execution and can make things happen, without even trying. And that's really hard for the conceptually minded person like myself. But then you have the person on that opposite side of the spectrum that is more technically minded. I think their challenge is to dream more, is to be curious more, is to let go of everything needing to be perfectly executed and go, what's actually possible for my life? And understanding that you're wired a certain way and being honest about that, be honest with yourself and with the people around you, and then being okay with that. And then going, but how can I challenge myself to grow? And I think it's kind of meeting each other in the middle, going that opposite end of the spectrum. Like, what's the direction that I'm actually afraid of going? And I think for me personally, it is actually staying involved in something. Because launching is one piece. That's something I'm super, I think, excited about, and it comes easily for me when it doesn't for everyone. But I think building, growing, and sustaining something is very different. And the fact that, like, if I can be honest with that, I can now see where my blind spot is. That once was a blind spot, but that isn't anymore. And I can invite people into that to help me do that, Like, as it comes to a business, like, I'm now looking to hire someone that is good at growing, sustaining, and building, as opposed to launching. We don't need someone who's good at launching things. That's me. And so that's even something that Dustin brings into Voke a lot, is how do we actually like execute on things really well. And then just kind of being able to grow that. I think it's very similar in marriage too. My wife is a type A amazing person who helps bring our dreams to life. If either of us were separate, she would have a hard time dreaming and I would have a hard time getting things done, but we're so much better together. in our marriage because of that. And it's only because I know that I'm not good at those other things. And that's okay, and also not using it as an excuse, but also not being like taking on too much shame as well.
Okay. Just last question. You have any parting words?
I think the thing that motivates me the most is just realizing that my life is ending 1 minute at a time. And I want to look back in 40 years and be able to say that I've lived the life that I wanted to, as opposed to not having agency in your life. I think a lot of people feel like they don't have agency and the ability to control their life, and that they're victim of things. And that probably comes with understandable reasons for them feeling that way. And I would just like want to challenge and say, like, as you look back in your life 40 years in the future, what do you want it to have looked like? Who are the people you have wanted to connect with? What are the people that have spoken into your life? What things have you accomplished? What things haven't you? Are you happy, as you look back on your life? And I think that's the thing that ultimately guides my dreaming process. And I'm just working one day at a time to achieve that. And like I said, it's ultimately about the pursuit, because I think by the end of my life, I will look back and go, I'm glad I pursued the life that I wanted to live, even if I didn't reach it. Because I know along the way that I will have been doing the things that brought me lots of joy. And that's what I think it's ultimately about.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Gavin Buckland, can we connect with you anywhere? Do you have a website?
Yes, you can check out our work at vokestudios.com. And if you're a production company or an agency or someone that's in filmmaking and hate the post-production process, we are your people. You can also follow me on Instagram at Gavin_Buckland and see all of the shenanigans that I am up to there.
Perfect. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again for tuning in to this podcast. Feel free to connect with me on social media, Facebook and Instagram at Jacob Hemingway Music. Also, you can check out jacobhemingway.com. It'll take you to my merchandise site. I'd love for you to go check that out and get a journal. Maybe get two. You can buy one for $18. You can actually buy two for $30. Why don't you go ahead and get another journal and get one for a friend or a loved one so you can dream together. Have a great day.